as I have said many, many times before, women have come a long way. And so it is today with my guest of today. She is a pilot, and we will visit the base where she is currently located, and she will take us on a wonderful tour and inform us about all the important things that there is to do in her profession and on this particular base. But let me back up just a moment. Like I said earlier, women have come a long way. It took a little while, and the same thing in this profession, being a woman pilot, it has taken some time, but just recently I think it was announced that women now have the chance to literally go into any field as far as flying is concerned. That is not only in our private lives, but it also pertains to our life as far as the government is concerned. And with that, I would love to introduce you to my guest today, Captain Diane Bellisimeri. Hi, Diane. It's so nice to have you. So nice for you to invite us out here and tell us, before we get started, tell us, where are we?
Okay, we're at the Channel Islands Air National Guard Base, and we're located at Point Mugu, which is just south of Ventura, California.
So here we are. We're just south of Ventura. We're just north of Los Angeles, for those of you who are not too familiar with the area. But we are out here at the Army Reserve Force. And what is your part on it?
Okay, well, this isn't an Army base. This is an affiliation of the Air Force. That's all right, Air National Guard. I'm a co-pilot of one of these C-130s that we have here all over the flight line, and I perform pilot duties.
You perform pilot duties. How long have you been a pilot?
I've been a pilot since 1985. I've been flying these airplanes about a year and a half. I came here.
Well, these seem like pretty big airplanes, but you will tell us about it later. So you've been flying since 1985. It sounds like you love your profession.
Yes, I do. I can't imagine not flying something, at least, part-time, not having it part of my life, I guess.
What did you do before?
Before I was a pilot, I was a mechanic. In fact, I worked on airplanes just like this a little farther up the coast at the unit up at Moffett Field.
I think that sounds like the ideal thing to do. I think a lot of us, before we start driving our cars, we should really become mechanics first, so that we know, by the time we break down, we know how to handle things in a pinch. Anyway, we are here in the middle of the airfield. Tell us a little bit about more about the plane, about what's going on here, what the missions are here, and so on.
Okay, as I said, these are C-130s. They're Hercules, and they're transport planes. They do have quite a myriad of missions. They perform weather, I don't really know what you call it. They fly into the eyes of hurricanes and take a lot of recordings and data on weather. This particular unit doesn't do that, but the airplanes are used for that. This unit performs trash hauling. We call it hauling cargo and passengers, all different places all over the world. They also have a firefighting mission here, MAFS, which is a modular airborne firefighting system, which is unloaded onto the aircraft and tankered with Phos-Chek, which is a fire retardant. And they were quite active during the recent Southern California wildfires, as well as they've been to Yosemite, they've been out of state, Oregon. Every year when we have the wildfire season, this unit is very active. We also have an aeromedical evacuation squadron here, and the aircraft are also configured, or can be configured, for litters and that type of thing as well.
God, it sounds like a quite heavy involvement. But tell me a little bit about yourself. You said you've been flying since 1985. What got you into flying? I mean, I find it very interesting, especially being in this particular unit. I mean, I will ask you a few more questions, and that's one: why not fly a 747 and be, one of the pilots there? But what got you interested in flying?
Well, I've always liked airplanes. I can't honestly say I always wanted to be a pilot, because when I was old enough to get into the National Guard, when I was 17, women weren't allowed to fly at all. We weren't allowed to be pilots. That just wasn't open to women yet. So I actually got into an Air Force band I was a music major. I was going to be a high school music teacher, and was working at a music store and needed a trombone for my next year in college.
From a trombone to a pilot. Well, that's
Right.
that's quite a step.
Well, that's life, I guess. You never quite know where you're going to end up. But I asked the guy that owned the music store if he heard of a good deal on a trombone to let me know. And he said, well, I've got a good deal for you, and it'll only cost you one weekend a month. And I didn't realize it, but he was the first sergeant in an Air Force band. And so before I knew it, was in an Air Force band and enlisted and on my way to basic training, and spent 3 years in an Air Force band. And that just didn't really work out, and became a crew chief. I wanted to fly. I knew I wanted to be around the airplanes, but unfortunately at that time there was nothing open to women. Women couldn't be pilots, navigators, radio operators, crew chiefs. They weren't, or not crew chiefs, load masters. Those types of things were considered combat related, and women just weren't allowed to do them. I had made some friends in the maintenance squadron, and they kind of talked me into becoming a maintenance crew chief, because that was considered a support position, and women were allowed to fly as a support, as maintenance personnel. So I did that for about 7 years. I've always thought that women should have an equal opportunity, an equal chance to do something if they want to do it and they're qualified to do it. I've never been a supporter of lowering standards or decreasing requirements in any way, but I've always felt that in America, if you want to do something and you're qualified to do it, who is one person to tell another person that you're not able to do that?
And I think especially in this country, I mean, we can really all be equal, because the opportunities are really there for everyone. And I find this quite an achievement for you to be that involved, and especially starting out doing some of the mechanical stuff that it takes. So how about, what about women on this particular unit? Do you have quite a few, or are you still in the beginning stages?
Well, we have a number of women in the unit. In the flying squadron, as I said, we have a whole aeromedical evacuation squadron, which is mostly women, nurses and medical technicians. In the flying squadron itself, we have 2 women pilots. We have another one besides myself who just came back from school about 3 months ago, and we have 2 women navigators. And one, again, recently just came back from school within the last year, and the other's been a navigator for quite a few years.
Well, maybe the camera can pick up a little bit about the enormity of these planes while we move around a little bit, and maybe you can just give us an idea what the difference is and what it takes to fly a plane like this.
The differences in what exactly do you mean?
Yeah, between the 747 and your regular plane that you go traveling in from here to there, and here you have these big monster planes, and I'm looking at you. I mean, you look so fragile, but it takes quite a bit, I think, to fly something like this.
Yeah, I don't really know much about the commercial airliners. Someday I'd like to. Like every other pilot, would love to have a career doing something like that. These particular airplanes are a large airplane to be flying into a lot of the short fields and austere fields that we go into. It's about the largest aircraft that flies into little dirt strips, little, as I say, austere locations. And it makes it quite a handy aircraft, because a lot of times in relief efforts, especially where you may not have paved runways of 10,000 feet, and it's a lot more difficult to get larger airplanes with bigger payloads and things into those fields. This aircraft is capable of landing on a sand strip, a little short dirt strip, and it can land and take off in a very short distance too. So it makes it quite a useful aircraft.
Yeah, like I said, it looks so monstrous. It looks so enormous, and for you to fly one of these planes, I think it's quite commendable.
Right.
Do you live on base, or do you have your home base somewhere else and commute back and forth? And how are your working hours? Are you stuck here, or how do you work it?
Well, I'm what you call a traditional guardsman. My only real requirement is 1 weekend a month, and about certainly about 1 weekend a month, and your 15 days of training. As a pilot, I have an additional requirement for 48 hours or 48 days throughout the year, which averages about 1 day a week of flight training, additional flight training to maintain a level of proficiency, and also some currency requirements. And in addition to that, as I say, this unit deploys all over the world for many different branches of the service, and so we also have crews that need to support those missions. So I stay pretty busy here. I don't have a civilian job in addition to this. This is all I do, and I work between 12 and 15 days a month, just enough to pay bills. You can be, you know, you don't have to, you're not obligated to work that many days. We have many people who do have a civilian employment and therefore, you know, just put in the amount required to stay proficient in their job.
What do you do with the rest of your time?
Relax.
Relax, relax.
I have a house that requires, you know, just the same amount of work that anybody else's house, and I have many other interests as well that I pursue, but I do enjoy the flying.
Because the reason I'm asking this is a lot of people take, oh, are we firing up?
No, they're not going to, they're just, that'll just be a few minutes. We can walk up this way and get away from the noise a little bit.
A lot of people take on flying as a hobby.
Right.
And this is your job. And I'm wondering, I mean, most people that fly, they're so involved in it, and you know, I mean, do you ever feel like doing anything else?
Oh yes, I have many things that I'd like to do. As I say, right now I kind of like being available for this. It's a mutually beneficial thing. I think the unit appreciates having a certain amount of pilots that don't do anything but this, because then when you get short notice mission requests for things like the earthquake or the floods or the fires, you have a pool of crew members who are ready to go and who don't have to worry about getting off of a civilian job. At the same time, I kind of like being available to go, because a lot of times you get some of the more unique missions when you're available at short notice.
And this mission, I mean, some of these missions, they literally take you all over the United States, or do you also go out to other areas wherever you're being used, like for instance, a Desert Storm or Somalia or any of those?
Yeah, this unit didn't actually deploy to Desert Storm, but they do go all over the world, and they perform many different missions, as I said earlier, for many different branches of service all over the world. Relief efforts. They were very much involved in Hurricane Nikki about a year ago, and it gives you a real good feeling too to know that you're helping people.
Well, Diane, earlier you mentioned that you were able to get permission to take us inside one of these enormous planes, and maybe we can do that, and you'll explain a few little things inside, and we get more of an idea what you actually do and the enormity of it, okay?
Okay, that'd be great. Let's go.
Well, why don't you follow us? We will go inside the plane, and Diane, or Captain Diane, will explain some of the intricacies of a cockpit and more or less her job. And again, this is the Women's Network. With that, the women pilot, we are coming a long way. Let's go. Okay, here we are in front of one of these big, huge transport planes, which Diana flies.
That's right, as a co-pilot.
As I mentioned earlier, we got into one of these huge, big planes. It's kind of mind-boggling, so I have to turn it over to Diane right away, because this is just too much for me to handle.
Well, it's actually, it's very systematic, and you just need to understand what the system is. For example, these gauges right here are all of your engine readouts, and it looks like there's a lot of them, but when you figure there's 4 engines, each row is for an engine, so you only actually have to need to know what 8 of them are, and then you just, you know, have those same 8 for 4 engines. These are all of your instrumentation. Your attitude indicator tells you, making sure that your airplane's level, how fast you're going, how high you are, what direction you're flying, and a lot of these are repeat on the other side for the other pilot. We have fire emergency stuff, we have a fuel panel, we have an electrical panel, we have an air conditioning and pressurization panel. So, as I say, everything kind of has a system, and you just, once you learn that little system, you just kind of automatically know where to go. These are your starter buttons. Well,
that's right. That's what earlier we said I needed a key. No, I'm very touchy sitting in this particular seat, but I really appreciate this opportunity to sit in here and to talk to you about all these God, I'm losing my words about just being here and going on a mission. I feel like we're taking off any minute. Diane, again, let me ask you, would you want to do anything else? Maybe later on in life? Or,
I have a lot of things I'd like to pursue in life, but even though I would do other things, I really can't imagine right now not flying. I think it would always be a little part of my life, and so right now it's a big part of my life, and maybe later on it'll be a little part, a smaller part, and maybe it'll get to be a bigger part again. I have applied to airlines. If that ever worked out, well, then it would be an even bigger part of my life.
well, see, in the airline industry, I think we're pretty much behind with women pilots still, aren't we?
I think so, but the economy isn't such right now really where anybody's doing much hiring, for men or women. So we need to wait till the economy picks up, and then my application's right in there with, 20,000 other people. So
yeah, I'm sure. Well, let's go back out because this is... it's warm, but it's such a beautiful day, and the ideal thing, I guess, would be to go up into the blue wild yonder, I believe, wild blue yonder. So let's look around the base a little bit, and maybe you can explain some of the operations and how everything gets started, and where the first buttons are to push to get the mission going. Okay? All right. From what I understand, Diane is going to open up the side of the plane so we can get an idea how big this plane is and what actually goes on. I mean, it really is some operation. It's huge. It looks like God, how can I explain this? Like a train station. Maybe the camera can go inside, and I have Diane take over and explain a little bit.
the rollers and stuff? Okay, this is the back of the airplane. This is the loadmaster's responsibility, where we have where we keep whatever it is that we're hauling from one place to another. We have these very comfortable seats if you want to ride in these, and we can carry about 90 people. These rollers that you see here are for our palletized cargo. A lot of what we transport is on big metal pallets that lock into the sides, and this just is for ease of onloading and offloading the pallets. The ramp that you see back there does extend down, and it's level, and so the pallets can just be slid right outside. And then there's a door that comes up, makes quite a wide opening. We have all along the center here, we have a row of one on each side litters that can be installed for the aeromedical evacuation and for earthquakes or any type of disaster where medical assistance is required. We can then transport people quite quickly. And then, so we come back. This whole area is where they would put the modular airborne firefighting system when we do support the wildfires, and it's just a gigantic pumping system that's loaded onto the airplane, and it has quite a large reservoir or tank where they store the Phos-Chek, and then it's actually the ramp is lowered and the door is opened, and the Phos-Chek is just deployed right outside of the aircraft whenever the pilot commands it. And then as we move back farther, we have all the comforts of home. The airplane has a little galley. It has an oven and a small refrigerator and all kinds of personal services. We're not too lost. No, actually, it can be quite comfortable. There are a couple of bunks up on top. Many times when we have very long missions and we have augmented crews, where that means that there's an extra pilot or an extra navigator, an extra crew member to help when someone is tired, and somebody can rest a little bit and then swap out.
Well, from what I can see and from what I hear from you, this sounds like a mission. When you finish, you're almost grateful as to your job, what you did, versus
helping people either get somewhere or move something, or you're always helping.
Right. Just standing in here gives you the feel of this is doing good of some kind. I'm not going to try to put down any other piloting or whatever, but to fly from east to west, just a straight trip, must be almost a bore compared to this.
Well, actually, yeah, it can be. But of course it takes a lot longer in an airplane like this with propellers than it does in your average jetliner. It takes us about 8 hours to get from coast to coast.
8 hours.
Yeah, even though it's more fun, it does take a little bit longer, so it's a trade-off. But it is a good feeling because everything we do is usually that somebody needs something and we're there to get it to them.
Oh, this sounds wonderful. Okay, well, let's go back out there and go on our next little trip. Okay, Diane, let's go on to our next stop and take it from there.
We're going to take you inside the squadron and kind of walk you through what happens, how we get a mission and how it's actually staffed and launched.
Okay, let's go.
A quick brief on how we get a mission and exactly what happens to it and between the time that it comes to us and we actually go fly. Current operations normally will get the requests from the National Guard Bureau for a mission, be it going to Bosnia or moving Army troops from one point to another or working with the Navy to see if they can fit a boat on an airplane for some type of training that they're doing. We support many different branches of the service worldwide. Current operations is the office that will accept the missions and basically say that we have airplanes available to support this mission. And then once the mission is up on the board, then you'll come to this office in here where we have our schedulers. These are our crew schedulers. This is our crew scheduling office. And once the mission comes in here, then we have a pilot scheduler, a flight engineer scheduler, navigators, loadmasters, and they will actually staff it with real bodies and real people and put a crew to that particular mission. Once we have a crew and then they show up the morning to go fly, they'd come in here, and this room is this is maps and publications. These people here are responsible for making sure that all of our publications, approach plates, charts, everything that we carry on board the airplane that tells you how to get from point A to point B is current. And they fix a little folder, like little box like this for each crew to take on their trip, and it has all of the appropriate publications for wherever they're going. And we also have another little box that looks like this called a trip kit, which has all of our forms and things. Then we come in here, and this is our flight planning room. This is where we actually put together the mission, and we do all of the flight planning to take off and go wherever our mission has dictated that we need to be. A couple people over here. We have one pilot and navigator over here doing a little of that right now, it looks like. And then we go fly. And then we come out here to our operations and sign in and get paid, and they tell us what airplane and how much gas is on it and drive us out to the airplane, and we're on our way to Timbuktu or Massachusetts or Africa or wherever we happen to be going that day. And that's about it.
Diane, I want to thank you for leading us on such a great mission. It was very, very interesting, and I hope all our viewers had fun following us around on the big airfield out there now in the operations area, and just plainly talking to Diane, who has been a pilot, co-pilot for some time now, and naturally will go on in the future. Maybe she'll pilot the next plane you're on. So let's go out to the very end of this tour and get the rest that we need to talk about of the base here. Now, Diane, I realize this is a long road to get to this point in your life, I'm sure. Like we talked about earlier, it's like you may fly 12 to 15 days a month. Now, how long do you stay with this unit, or do you change units and you have a different flying pattern or your flight schedule, whatever? How does this all work?
Well, typically this is not an active duty unit. This is a reserve unit. So it's not like in the active duty where, you know, after 3 years a set of orders comes that says now you're going to Minot, North Dakota, or now you're going to you know, Knoxville.
I mean, will they tell you?
Changes. No, you initiate the change. You decide, you know, you want to stay in this unit. They have people stay 30 or 40 years in one unit, and their fathers were there and their grandfathers were there, and the Guard is kind of more of a family, close-knit thing.
Yeah.
and they have a lot of experience because of that. They have people that have stayed around doing the same thing for so many years. If you decide you want to move somewhere else and you find another unit and you go talk to that unit and they say they are willing to take you in, then you negotiate, handle all of the negotiations to get you transferred from one unit to another. I would have loved to have gone when I was 17 years old to a unit and, right down the street and signed up there and known that I would have been there for 30 or 40 years. I think that would have been great. Unfortunately, it wasn't that way for women because a lot of things weren't open to women, and it was a job just to find a unit that would even allow women to do almost anything at that time. So I have always hit that glass ceiling that we talked about, and I have just gone somewhere, and because that's the highest I could go, and then I'd wait a while till something else opened up and a little more challenging, and then I'd go apply to that, and it might be, well, this unit was 300 miles away from where I live, and so I've just always kind of gone to follow the opportunity and a new challenge. And now that everything is open, I don't know, I'm happy.
When you say everything is open for women as well.
Yeah, I don't believe, I think as of last May, all of the flying restrictions have been lifted for women. And so pretty much, even to the fighters, if you find a unit that's willing to take you in, then, you can negotiate the transfer yourself. You can go somewhere else. I'm pretty happy in the C-130. It is a bit of a commute for me.
What have you flown before?
I flew a Metroliner before. The military designation is a C-26, and it was the support plane at the F-16 wing at the Air National Guard at Fresno. And I flew that for about 2 years. And before that, I was in training flying the T-37 and T-38 for a year. And prior to that, I flew helicopters for the Army National Guard, which I'm very proud to have a commission with the Army. Fort Benning is where I was commissioned, and I flew Hueys and Chinooks for the unit up in Stockton, California at the Army National Guard. And prior to that, as I say, I was a mechanic.
Well, do you ever feel like making this a sport and take a plane and go around the world and, like so many people try to establish records and compete?
I don't know that I ever want to take an airplane and just go off by myself around the world for a sport. These airplanes take me around the world already.
Well, Diane, I can't thank you enough. It's been such a pleasure talking to you and being out here and you showing us around. I think this is a very rare opportunity for all of us to see, and I hope my viewers really enjoyed this as much as I did. And again, I want to really thank you for inviting us out here and giving us the opportunity. It really was very informative, very educational, and I hope I see you again maybe next year, and you will tell us all about the latest and about maybe your life and see where your next step is going.
That'd be great.
Again, I want to thank, first of all, Captain Diane Belmesiri, and I want to thank all your viewers for being with us and listening to this wonderful captain explaining everything there is at this particular base and taking us on such a wonderful tour. So with that in mind, I want to leave for today, and again, I hope you had a lot of fun. It was very informative to me, so with that, goodbye, and until I see you again, bye-bye.